welcome our friends in Iowa City and neighboring districts around us. Anyone that can receive education exchange is welcome to our studios of Public Access TV tonight. It's my privilege as a host of this show is to welcome our Superintendent, Steve Murley.
Thank you very much.
We are so honored to have you tonight to open the season and to greet our audience and tell them what you have for them in your district. And on my left side is my co-host, Dr. Viraj Thacker. And I think we have good news for our audience, right, about this show.
We do. It's been wonderful to work with PATV over the years, and we're so excited that in addition to working with them as we move forward, we will be able to partner with the City of Iowa City. They've been a great partner for the school district as we look at expanding our facilities, and now we'll have the opportunity to expand our broadcast range through their cable channel. So we are very excited about that.
And we'll be 3 times a week.
It will.
On Channel 4 cable. Mr. Murley, welcome back.
Thank you.
Every year we open this show, receiving you in our place here, and then we end usually the year by having you wrapping up and telling us what has been achieved. And almost always over the years, now 8 years, I have been your host here, and I see that you, the first show, you say things that you're going to do. And then the last show, I discovered that everything that you said has been achieved. And it has been a tough journey because as you know, and our audience know, we live in a very highly educated community, a lot of concerned citizens, many points of view, and very opinionated crowd. And this doesn't make the job easy. Sometimes we are in the amidst the controversy, whatever you do. So, but you prove to have a good, thick skin. And we are happy that you eventually decided to stay with 3 more years, right?
Yes. Yes, very excited about that. You know, it's
more.
It could very well be longer than that. One of the benefits of being in this community is very high standards. And what that allows us to do is to set those high standards in our classroom. And I think we see that in the product that comes out and the students that walk across the stage. One of the things that you always look at the start of the school year is to look forward to May, when you get to stand on the stage and you get to watch the graduates as they walk across. So this is the beginning of the race, and just a few short months from now, we will see them walk across the stage, and again, those high standards will have created students that are ready to move on and accept their next challenge.
And we have at the outset to thank a lot of people. Geraldo Sandoval is our director here. He was generous enough to be part of the negotiation that we had. We spent a good time in the summer talking to the generous people of the city of Iowa City. And we have been welcomed by the city manager and his assistant, Simon Andrew, and Shannon Mackman. I hope I'm saying her name correct. As well as, of course, Ty Coleman, who is the big guy at the station, as well as my old friend, my wife's classmate, Mr. Kevin Crowley, who is the guy that now is going to show our program to the audience. He is a technologist specialist at the city media. All these people deserve our thanks. And locally here, John Karhoff, the father of this show, he's a young man, but he's full of energy. Yeah. He does his best to put us on the screen in the best way he can. he's camera shy, but he does a lot of work behind this glass window, right?
Yep.
And we have Michael Peterson, and of course Sujat Singh, who is our director tonight. Did I miss something?
No, I think you've covered them all, and the rest of the staff at
Right.
PATV. So.
Yeah, we can mention lots of names
Yeah.
if we take your time.
Well, it's a wonderful platform for us. We love the opportunity to get our students and our staff and our programs out in front of a broader audience. So certainly our thanks to PATV and now to the City of Iowa City for helping us increase our reach and really help people see inside what happens in our classrooms.
I probably forgot to mention the role of Christine Peterson from the district, helping us all the time, getting our work really giving it the motion that it needed. So to her, we have to give a big credit to. Mr. Murley, what do you have for the community?
Well, I think one of the things that is front and center right now that people are following and asking questions about is what's happening with our attendance areas and to what extent is the board working to better balance demographics across the district. At our 3 high schools and our 3 junior highs, the comprehensive high schools and comprehensive junior highs that serve specific catchment areas, that's a little bit easier to do simply because they cover a broader geographic area. With the elementary schools, they have a little bit smaller geographic area, and that makes it a little more challenging. And so the board's been engaged in some fairly extensive dialogue amongst themselves, and are now beginning to reach out across the broader community to have that conversation about what options might be available for us to look at those areas where it's been harder from a simple geographic standpoint to balance those demographics and to explore some other options. So they've spent the past 2 to 3 months looking at everything from changes to attendance area boundaries to talking about pairing schools, options of magnet schools as part of that process, but really with the end result to try to create better balance among our elementary schools.
And this is actually was one of the questions that I received last week from parents who knew that you were going to be our guest at the first show. And it was probably paraphrased in the way you just said it. The parents said, what is the right balance between small neighborhood schools where teachers and principals know the kids and larger school where there are economies of scale more scale or
That's a great question, and I think one of the things
more
that
busing.
Sure.
More busing.
I think one of the things that sometimes people lose sight of because we are the Iowa City Community School District is the fact that we also serve North Liberty and we serve Coralville. We serve Hills and University Heights, so we have 5 municipalities, plus a big part of rural Johnson County. And each community has its own personality. And when we went through this process back in 2013, we had dialogue with the community, and we know from that feedback that our core area in Iowa City places a great deal of value on small neighborhood schools. And in some of our newer areas around North Liberty and north part of Coralville, there's much more comfort with larger elementary schools. And so you see a Garner Elementary School, a Penn Elementary School up in North Liberty, a Borlaug Elementary School on the west side of Coralville, being a little bit larger schools. And so to that parent's point, you get some more economies of scale with that. On the east side of Iowa City, we have many smaller neighborhood schools. And you lose some of those economies of scale, but you get some of the things that the parent shared, which is a little bit smaller community, perhaps a little bit more connectedness with that small community.
And just because I'm not so familiar with the expression myself, how do we simplify for people who are not really used to this kind of jargon in economics and
Sure.
planning?
One of the things that we struggle with in schools is the number of kids in a grade level.
Oh, okay.
So if you have a nice even number of 25 students, you need 1 teacher. If you have 50 students, you need 2 teachers. What do you do if you have 35 kids?
Oh.
That's too many kids to put in 1 classroom. Now you have 2 teachers, but they have classes of 17. So for the district, as we look at marshaling what unfortunately due to recent state funding decisions has been a diminishing resource base, that's harder for us to balance. And so one of the good conversations that's been taking place at the board table during the work sessions is about that economy of scale issue. And if you had two smaller elementary schools where one school served a population of students that was kindergarten through second grade, and another one served students that were third through sixth grade, and now you combine the students from both of those attendance areas at those grade levels, you'd have more students in that cohort, which makes it a little bit easier from a mathematical standpoint to get some of those economies of scale that you don't otherwise see with a smaller school. There are always positives and negatives when you look at those as alternatives. The board's been exploring those, so they really understand what the pros and cons are. So when they get to the point where they're out and having conversations with the community, they're well versed in that. They can get that feedback. They can make that decision based on that balance of those two, recognizing that the answer isn't a right or wrong answer. It's a question of values, and it's a question of what fits best for our community. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that they have, is because there isn't a clear-cut right or wrong. At some point in time, subjective values are going to come into play, and we're going to have to make a decision that's good for students, good for parents, good for the community, recognizing that whichever decision the board makes, there will be some things that will speak in favor of that, and some things that we will have to mitigate.
Right, I think you're taking
Yeah, the second one. Well, aside from the technicalities and economies of scale related to diversity, I'd just like to make a point on what I've seen firsthand in the last, let's say 20 years. And definitely that's been a tremendous, sense of diversity in the schools that our kids have attended. And as time has gone by, that has certainly, spread even more. And what was encouraging to me, especially after having a graduate from the area now at a bigger school, is that some of these big schools are taking sort of similar initiatives to find kids that are quite brilliant,
Yes.
but they may be, in the shadow somewhere, let's say in a state like Iowa, and then you discover this very impressive school district, and that's where a lot of the talent lies. So I personally feel that it's come a long way, the initiatives towards diversity on, many of these fronts, and we are probably, benefiting from that as our kids are.
Absolutely,
So,
and I know we had a conversation, all three of us being parents in the school
Yeah.
district, either current or past. I think that one of the things that you really see is the benefit that having that kind of diversity
Absolutely.
provides for our students. And I would agree with you, I think we're a hidden gem out there. And I think that we are seeing our profile being elevated because the statistics, just the numbers, not looking at the three-dimensional kids that those numbers represent, but you see those numbers coming out in places like scoring at the top in the AP index across the state, in terms of the number of students that are graduating, into their scores, their ACT test scores, the number of college credits that they've taken, all those types of things, which for those on the outside looking in become metrics of success for us.
True.
And I think one of the things that goes to your point that we're really working hard on is recognizing that we started the show by talking about the high standards that we have in the community and recognizing that our student population, our entire student population, has the ability to meet those standards and exceed them. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we are finding all of the children in the district
Absolutely.
and ensuring that they're all pushing themselves and that their level of rigor matches their aptitude. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you need an encouraging adult who says, I think you should take an AP class. I think you should take an honors class. You should be in a Project Lead the Way class. You should be taking this higher level, more rigorous coursework. And when we do that, I think then that creates those opportunities that you mentioned.
A lot of these bigger schools, what they've put out is that a lot of smart, brilliant kids are sort of turned away from thinking of applying to, big Ivy League schools because they don't have the right counselor or person to tell them that you should go, you can do it, right? I think we see that a lot in this district, and I think this last graduating class has, sort of testimony to that. There are a lot of impressive kids that made it to,
And I think the kids start looking to their peers that have graduated in front of them and saying, if they can do that, I can do that.
Absolutely.
And so they wind up being just wonderful role models. And I think the more students that we have that take rigorous coursework encourages the next generation to continue to do that. The more that apply to really prestigious, highly selective universities and get into those, encourages others to say, I can do that too.
Absolutely.
I think one of the points in the question was about the vendors and the service providers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Would you mind reading it?
Sure. Let's see. What diversity initiatives is the administration developing or implemented for its vendors and service providers? Question.
Well, I think one of the things that we know that's, and you mentioned this earlier, that's increasingly important for us is that we look at our student population and we make sure that our adults in the school, and that's all adults in the school, have a background that allows them to work most effectively with students. So we've spent quite a bit of time working on implicit bias training with our staff. The next step in that process is to really work on our culturally responsive educational practices. And one of the things that I really stress with the staff, which I think is important for us to remember, is everyone who's in the school is an educator.
Yeah.
Yes, the teachers in the classroom, very obviously we know that they're involved in teaching and learning, but our food service staff, our custodial staff, our physical plant staff, our paraprofessionals, our secretaries, our administrators, they all come in contact with our students.
True.
And they all serve as educators in one way or another, whether it's being a role model, helping encourage the students from a course-taking standpoint. And we know it extends beyond that because there are many people who come into the school from outside, whether it's BASP providers, before and after school program providers for our youngest children, all the way up to people that are working with students in job shadowing and internships at the high school level. And so it's an opportunity for us not just to work to improve the capacity of the staff in our district, but also to look beyond that and to make sure that all the adults who are coming into contact with our students have the capacity to work with them regardless of the background that the students have when they come in. And I think for us that winds up being an enormous asset. A challenge for sure, but an enormous asset in the long run.
Absolutely.
We have another parent sent us question here.
Yeah. So I think this one relates to student anxiety, stress. Does the district collect information of what is stressful for a student? For example, could parents get an idea of what is stressing our kids out this year? Too much homework, grades, clubs, sports, bullying, home environment, etc. I would like to have access to this high-level information as a parent so I can better understand my child's peer environment and how that influences my child.
That's a wonderful question in the sense that we know that mental health issues are more prevalent now than they've been in the past decade or two. We see those continuing to escalate. It's everything from, I think as that parent indicated, the overscheduled nature that some of our students face. One of the downsides of having a district with high expectations is that that's translated to the students. So we have a lot of students who set themselves a very high set of expectations. And that's a challenge. We have kids that will routinely take 8 classes or 9 classes. And that puts a lot of stress on them academically. Though even those students are taking a regular load, the participation rate in extracurriculars is very high. And so we have a lot of students that hold on to a lot of that, and that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And so we are working harder now to get a better understanding of those stressors. We're working to try to get surveys in place that students feel comfortable with their anonymity so that they can give us open and honest feedback about those things that are triggers, as that parent was indicating. We are continuing to increase our staff for whom that's a focus. Corrine Frank, who works in our district, spends an inordinate amount of her time working on those mental health factors and the indicators so that we can make sure that we're targeting supports to schools and students where they're needed, to make sure that we're in the classroom helping students understand what resources are available to them, because in many cases these students don't want to ask for that help. And so we need to make sure that they understand what those opportunities are, how they can avail themselves of those, how they can do it with a level of anonymity so that if they aren't interested in sharing that concern or challenge that they have with their peers, they can do so in a way that gives them that privacy that they need to really go through that process of asking for help and then hopefully getting the assistance that they need.
Absolutely.
And that's an ongoing process for us. We've been asking the state for some time for additional assistance with us, struggling a little bit to get the monetary support that we think would really help us do that. So one of the things that we're working hard to do is to carve out those funds that we have available to us through various grants or categorical funds and target those towards those mental health supports that we know the students need. And unfortunately, those start as low as elementary. It's not just our high school students that face that. Our elementary kids frequently wind up with similar challenges, and so we recognize that that continuum of services literally starts at elementary school and runs right through high school.
I was following last week the conversations and the seminars of the Urban Superintendent Academy Conference. It was held in Alexandria, Virginia, on August 24th. There were a lot of discussions about gun control, safety, and all that. I know that each topic of this can take a show. But one of the things that I was interested in was the discussion about how the superintendent, in particular, makes a decision about the leadership in schools. And when do you expect that this leader is going to succeed? Or maybe let us try. So can you shed some light on this? And the second point, because I don't want to interrupt you, you may go ahead and was the discussion of the what they call the linksters generation now, the new kids that are now junior high, sophomore, junior high school or sophomores. And those kids have different culture, different vocabulary, different perception of the reality and all that history. This will be the second point. Can you address these two points before we go to that?
Certainly. So one of the things that is very important is making sure that you have an appropriate leader in a building. And so a lot of that is about fit. And that fit is the right fit for the student population, the right fit for the staff, the right fit for the parents. So one of the things that we work really hard in placing administrators in the building is having them go through a really rigorous interview process that includes those people as part of the interview team, because they're often the best judges of how that fit will take place.
Who are the interview people?
So we use, where appropriate, we use students. We always use staff. We use parents. We frequently use community members as part of that process. And again, we're looking for those people who know the environment, know the school and its characteristics, work there, live there in the neighborhood, and they can help reflect on the needs of the school and the needs of the community that supports the school, so that we get somebody in there who meets their expectations.
It is a recommendation to you.
Exactly. It is in the end. Somebody has to make that final call.
Sure.
And sometimes you wind up with different interview teams that have a preference for one candidate over the other, and so you've got to get in there and weigh the feedback. One hopes that you've set the stage with a good pool of applicants so that they've got lots of flexibility when they go through that interview process. But at the same time, you hope that the authenticity of the candidate shines through and they're able to select somebody that's going to be a good fit for them, good educational leader, good social emotional leader. So one of the things that you'd ask about was, and it's directly relational to this, especially when you're looking at your student population, is how kids are changing. And you look at those, it's almost like sedimentary rock, you look at these stripes of the various generations that are in the school. And the Linkster group that's in there right now, the students that are as old as their early high school career, they come to us with a different digital orientation, always on. They come to us with a different set of expectations about what happens in class. One of the things we frequently talk about with the teachers is that they need to remember that these kids always want to know why. Why am I doing this? When you and I were students, if they told you to do these math problems, you did these math problems. These kids want to know, where's the application of that math? Where am I ever going to use this next month, next year, 10 years from now? And if you can't answer why, then they want to know, what is the point of doing that? And you really have to be able to tell them the why, and it's in every discipline. And if you can start with that, you can make a connection, and they will work incredibly hard. But that's imperative, that you get them to understand the why of what you're doing.
Well, before we wrap up this, we have about 2 minutes, 1 minute and a half. What's your message to the community? If there's anything we overlooked, Viraj and I, and you think is important for the community to know, please go ahead and
well, this is a start. This is a start of the school year, and between this and graduation, these are probably the two most special times of the year. I told the staff when we got together, I just finished reading a book called When, and there's a lot of how-to books out there. There aren't a lot of when-to books out there, but that they spent 2 years doing research on when. And one of the things that they'll tell you is that the beginning of the school year is a temporal social landmark, and that's an opportunity for everyone to get a fresh start. Our students, our staff, our parents, the community as a whole. Being in a university town, I think that's particularly apropos, but this is really a fresh start opportunity for us, and we're off to a great start, and I'm just so excited that we are here and we're off and running.
We thank you very much. Viraj, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's been a wonderful start, like you said, and wish you a very successful school year, and I know it'll go off very well.
And I look forward to seeing you as a bookend at the end of the year.
An honor to have you here, and just stop by anytime. And I know that we're going to see all your staff throughout the year.
Absolutely.
And thank you for helping scheduling them.
Absolutely.
I know that the guys that don't attend, they get demoted.
We find other opportunities.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
For our audience, thank you very much. And for our director, Sujat Singh, and our Chief Executive Officer there, or Chief Executive Producer, Mr. John Karhoff, thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you again very much.
Thank you very much.
And we congratulate ourselves for having you 3 more or 6 more years.
Absolutely.
Thank you.